Okay, welcome back. As you can see over there, I've got the fuselage sitting on the stand, and we'll get to that in a minute. Next thing I want to do is verify the contents of these bags and make sure we've got everything. The first bag is a bag of stuff for electric. This little wooden triangle is for used to mount in when you're doing the electric installation for an electric motor. This is the firewall for the electric motor. It's basically a plywood box. It's got a piece of Velcro in it, and that plywood box gets mounted on the front of the airplane, but we won't be using that. And if I'm correct, this bag of parts is used for mounting the firewall and the electric firewall and the motor to it and so forth. So this whole bag is for the electric installation of an electric motor on the aircraft, so we won't need this bag at all. And so what's in the other bag? First is the landing gear, and that's the two main gears and the nose gear. And you got 3 tires. They're all the same size now. I think in the previous manual it showed the nose wheel a little bit separately. The size of these wheels, I didn't read it in the manual, but I'll read it off now, is 3 inches. So these are 3 3-inch wheels, and that will go in its own little plastic container, so I know where all the landing gear stuff is. So that's for the landing gear. Next is the fuel tank. Fuel tank, I'll open this up as soon as I can find the scissors. The tank is a little bit differently. It's going to lay on its side like this, and there is 1 tube in there, but that certainly won't be enough. The stopper for the tank is set up with 3 tubes for it, so I won't have to make any modifications for this. I'll just have to add 3 tubes with an extra clunk, and I'll show you that when we get to it. So there's 1 clunk, and I'll probably use that one for the filling, and I'll have a different clunk with a filter on it for the fuel to the carburetor. And you got 1 fuel length, and we'll be making some more. So that's the fuel, along with this piece of plywood that is used to hold the fuel tank in place. Although it may go a different direction. I'll have to read the instructions on how that works. Okay, so all the fuel parts and go in a box. And when we're ready to do the fuel, that'll be ready. Don't need that plastic bag anymore. Next is the nylon engine mounts with the screws necessary. There's 4 screws and some washers, and the blind nuts are already installed in the front of the aircraft. So I'll find a small box to put that in. Use one of my grocery boxes. Last, there's a bag of parts. Now this bag of parts I'll divide out later and count, and I'll compare that to my checkoff sheet. I won't take the time on the video to do that, but it's all of the, you can see in here that there's there's a metal clevis, the nylon servo horns, and washers and collars for locking everything together. So I'll inventory this bag and put it in a box, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Thank you. Okay, I'm back, and I've taken all of the parts that were in that bag and spread them out on a nice towel here. I'm going to go through what each one is and how I categorize them and sort them out. So first is the nylon control horns. There's 4 of them. You break this little piece off and you've got 3 of these little screws. There's 3 screws, and they're M2 by 15 millimeter. I take a millimeter ruler and measure them to make sure they're the right size. And so these control horns, so the 4 control horns and the 4 times 3 is 12 screws are for the control horns. So I'm going to put those in this box here, and that'll be for everything related to the control horns. Okay. Next are these wheel collars. Okay, so you got a wheel collar, and in it is a metal screw to lock it down, a locking screw. There's 6 collars and 6 of the metal screws. When you use these metal screws, it requires a 1.5 millimeter Allen screw. So what I'm going to do is, because these are tiny little things that you don't want to lose, I'm going to lock these down into all 6 of these. You have to be careful that you don't cross thread them, because they're finely threaded. And so you put that in there, and so all 6 of those are for the landing gear. And this box up here has the landing gear and wheels in it, so those go in there. This is the nose wheel steering horn, and so that's going to go in the nose wheels in the box for the wheels and landing gear and stuff. There's 4 metal clevises. I'm glad they're using, I love these pliers, tweezers. These metal clevises came with the little tubing, and so I put the tubing on the end where it's going to go, and those will lock in the control horns. So I'm going to put all 4 of those in there. There's a nylon clevis with a little tubing keeper. That is for the throttle. Now, I don't like nylon clevises because the little pin in there might break. That little pin there is very delicate, can break. So I might change that out for a metal one, we'll see. But it's going to go in with the rest of the clevises. And then these 2 little metal push rod connectors are for connecting the rod to the servo arm, and there's one for the throttle and one for the nose gear. So I'm going to put one of these for the nose gear in with the nose gear and other gear stuff. And the other one for the throttle will have a clevis and for that nylon clevis, so it's going to go in that box. There are 4 3mm by 10, and that is for the screw for the cowl. And I'm going to put those 4 in this little plastic tub here. So that's for the cowl. There's 4 M3 by 15mm screws. There's 4 of those, and 2 of these nylon tabs that are going to be used to lock the landing gear to the bottom of the airplane. So that's going to go with the landing gear stuff. So those 2 tabs and those 4 screws are going to go in that box. There's 2 wing bolts, and I'm just going to put those in with a cowl. There are 4 M30, let me see, they're M4s, 4mm size bolt, 30mm long, and it has a washer and a nylon nut, locking nut, and that's for the engine. So those 4 are going to go in the box that I have for the nylon mounts and the other screws to mount the engine to the firewall. Just 4 of those. This small wooden block is to put behind the tank to hold it in place, so I'm going to put it in my box for the tank. And then we have these 4 nylon keepers. Okay, these nylon keepers are for Z-bends. I probably will not use the Z-bends, so I'm going to put this in this last container here, my sesame noodle container, because I don't think I'm going to use them. There were 4 extra washers that I'm not sure where they go, but they're going to go in that container. And so that takes care of the small bits. Be sure to, if you don't have a 1.5mm, this is a Dubro 1.5mm nut driver. And I do love these tweezers that hold without having to squeeze it all the time. And I've got a nice 6-inch ruler to measure things by. So that's all the small parts, and see you on the next segment. I'm going to add one more thing. All the long push rods and the other straps and so forth, I just bundled together and put 2 rubber bands around the end so they would hold in place and they won't get lost, and they'll sit on the workbench for when I need them. Thank you. Be back soon.